Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 2. I've got the lovely Larissa with us today, and she's based in Australia. So, Larissa is an epigenetics coach. So, she's going to tell us a bit about what she does and how she can help us generally. So, Larissa, thank you for coming on. And can you tell us a bit about what you do and how you feel that you can help people that are watching today?
Yeah, hello everyone. First of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited for our conversation today. And yeah, so as you said, I'm a certified epigenetics coach, which means that I help people to optimize their well-being, their health, by looking at our deepest level of existence, which is our genes. And what I do is I coach people one-on-one through how they can become their most happiest, but especially their most healthiest version of themselves. And I do that by looking at all the different areas of people's life and then optimizing every area and restoring balance in the body, looking at health issues, maybe looking at disease. Always from an epigenetic point of view. Yeah, that's
So,
what
I
I do.
wondered then, so on the health aspect, do you think then that things are passed down through the generational line? So, if something was grandmother or great grandmother, that you're likely to get it, or is there a way that you can sort of switch that gene off so you don't actually, or maybe even lessen it? Don't really know. What do you think?
Yeah, so that's actually an old paradigm, an old set of beliefs that we have that only because a certain disease like cancer or whatever it is runs in our family, we are most likely to get that too. That's how we used to think about genetics, about disease. But epigenetics has found that this is not true. So even if a certain disease runs in your family, it's only due to the fact that your family was exposed to the same environment over and over again. And this environment then triggered a certain gene to get turned on instead of being switched off.
Okay.
Because, yeah.
Yeah, honestly, I carry on. It's
Yeah.
fascinating.
Because just for everyone who doesn't know what epigenetics is, it is the science that shows us how our environment, and thereby I mean our outer environment, but also the inner environment, influences our genes' activity. Because scientists have found that there are those molecular mechanisms that are sitting on top of our DNA. That's, by the way, also where the name comes from, because epi means above or on top in Latin, so on top of our genes.
Yeah.
And these mechanisms, they decide whether a certain gene gets turned on or off. And that happens through signals that those mechanisms receive from the environment, from the cellular environment, but also the environment that we ourselves are exposed to. Yeah.
Interesting. So, if you're in a stressful environment, say a stressful relationship, for instance, and there's a lot of arguing, negativity, and stuff like that going on, that would affect your epigenetics. Is that what you're telling
Yes,
me? Yeah.
100%. Because if we take this example, if we have stress, like even work stress or even stress within our body that's due to some kind of inflammation or disease, then we produce a lot of certain hormones, like for example, cortisol, which is a stress hormone. And if we have too much of that in our blood, then the environment, the cellular environment, is not a good one. And therefore, those mechanisms that are sitting on top of our DNA, they regulate our gene function in a way that's not beneficial for our body. And then it might happen that they turn on certain genes that we rather want to see turned off.
Yeah. Can you turn them off again?
Yes, that's the beautiful thing about epigenetics, because as I said in the beginning, our genetic destiny is not set in stone as we used to believe for so long.
Yeah.
Um, Epigenetics shows that we literally hold the power over our own health in our own hands,
Yeah.
through setting or creating a certain environment that benefits our genetic regulation.
Okay.
And
Does
we
that
can,
Sorry
Yeah,
to
no,
interrupt. So
you're
it's
right.
just come into my mind. Does that mean like you're creating something within as well? So even if you're in a
Yes.
bad environment, you can choose, if you can, stay calm and peaceful and relaxed, and then you could lessen that effect.
100%. And that's basically one of the key points that you mentioned, because in the end, it all comes down to our perception, how we perceive
Right.
different situations, how we perceive different environments. Because then, when we perceive something as positive, or when we create certain positive thoughts or even positive emotions like gratitude, joy, even love, then our body or and our brain, they create a chemical structure that's a different one to emotions like, for example, fear or anger or
Yeah.
frustration. And these chemical structures are exactly what forms the environment in which then these epigenetic mechanisms act. So basically, it all comes down of how we choose to perceive certain situations, but also on how we choose to react to certain situations or certain circumstances that we're in. So
Yeah.
I always, at this point, I always tell an example where, let's imagine you're on the way to work in your car and then there's traffic and you're stuck in traffic and you're late. And then you have two scenarios, two options really.
Mm.
Number one would be you're angry, you're frustrated. You can already see your boss yelling at you for being late. You can already see yourself doing overtime. You're getting even more stressed when only thinking about it, and you're in a really bad mood. Number two, scenario two would be that you kind of accept the situation because there's nothing you can do about it anyways in this moment. And you decide to choose to take the time and listen to a podcast that you wanted to listen to all the time, or
Mm.
to call a friend, or to just like sing along with to your favorite songs.
Yeah.
And what that does, just like the conscious choice of how do I react to this situation,
Yeah.
it creates different environments in our body. So one scenario A would be it creates stress hormones, it creates thoughts and emotions that are not beneficial for our body and our mind, and therefore also not for our genes.
Mm.
It just puts us in a bad mood. Whereas the other situation creates joy and maybe even gratitude for having the time just for yourself in this car stuck in traffic. And that's basically a principle that you can apply on almost every situation in your life. Like you have the choice how to react to certain things. And therefore, knowing that you create a different environment for your genes to thrive in than when you choose to kind of not react at all and just go with the negative emotion.
Okay, so then that would potentially create maybe a lot of pain within the body, wouldn't it? And maybe inflammation for people that are
Yes.
highly stressed or anxious, would you say?
Yes, 100%. So I think in 95% it is of chronic diseases, stress is related to the root cause. So stress kind of enhances everything, and it because the body can't regulate its function properly because it's in fight or flight mode all the time. All the other bodily functions, like the immune system, for example, gets suppressed because all the energy of in our body is being used for that fight and flight response in order that we literally need to fight or flight. This whole, by the way, this whole fight and flight mode or response stems from a time from like, I don't know how many years ago, like thousands of years ago, when we had to run from a saber-toothed tiger, for example.
Yeah.
And that was like very helpful in this situation. But nowadays, the modern saber-toothed tiger is like our busy lifestyle, our overwhelmment all the time, our exposure to digital devices, everything. So our body doesn't really has the chance to break out of this fight and flight mode, which is why it is so important to actively and consciously create an environment in which this fight and flight mode is switched off.
Yeah.
And yeah, that comes down to two states of our nervous system, which is the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. And one big part in my work is also to teach people how they can get to this parasympathetic nervous system, which is the only mode in which relaxation, but also healing can take place.
Yeah. Do you practice like the meditation and what else would you do? Maybe would you be in nature, walking? What do you suggest your clients do then to start the process? I know there's a lot that goes into
Yeah.
your work, but just to start, where would somebody start?
So meditation is always a great start because
Mm,
it's not only good for the immune system, like there are so many studies nowadays that shows how meditation actually benefits your immune system, but then also it's good for focus, it's good for relaxation, and it's also good for longevity. So there are also a lot of studies that show how meditation affects our gene activity when it comes to longevity.
mm.
But I also have to say that meditation is not for everyone, at least not the meditation that we picture where we sit
Yeah.
cross-legged on the floor.
Yeah.
But the good thing is that there are different forms of meditation. So if this kind of meditation is not for you, then you could, for example, try to have a form of a meditation under the shower where you just close your eyes and kind of take in the whole experience. Like, what do you smell? What do you feel on your skin? How does the water sound when it touches the floor? Like, all these kind of things.
Yeah.
That's, for example, a good way to start. Or even when you're outside, it's called walking meditation,
Yeah.
where when you have a walk with your dog or when you just walk by yourself, if you really like try to be present in the moment and take in what's happening um, around yourself, if you activate all your five senses,
Mm.
then this is also a form of meditation. So one of those things I definitely recommend because what it does is it puts you back into the present moment,
Yeah.
and that's very important because in so many reasons. But then also a very powerful tool that's also easy to implement or to start off with is expressing gratitude.
Mm.
And it sounds simple,
Yeah.
but it has such a massive impact on our health, on our gene expression, again, also on longevity. And it's just the best way to boost your mood in seconds.
Mm.
So, what I personally do, for example, I have this gratitude journal where I always write down three things that I'm grateful for today. And then also at the end of the day, I reflect on what made me smile today and what was my highlight of the day.
Yeah.
And just by kind of pausing for a second and thinking about these things, you kind of realize, well, even if today was not the best day, or even if I was not in the best mood, there were still things that made me smile. And there are things that I can always be grateful for. And
Mm.
I feel like this is such an easy, it sounds very easy, but the impact that this tool or this method has is just amazing and powerful. And that's what I always recommend to start with. And then obviously there are like
Yeah.
so many tools and techniques,
Yeah.
but it's kind of a journey and it's important to go step by step.
Yeah. So you sort of dive deep, don't you? You go into the repeating patterns, say, or things that you've taken on from ancestors. But especially if somebody can't understand, except they've not had a trauma, but they are really highly anxious all the time, and they just can't understand why they feel that way. They do all the stuff and they try to bring everything down and regulate their system, but they can get 0 to 100 really quickly through anxiety. And can you look back to see where that actually stemmed from
Yes,
the family down the generational line?
yes. So that's the part which is called transgenerational epigenetics. It's a discipline of epigenetics. And this part looks, as you said, at which things in your life you might have inherited from your ancestors,
Mm.
besides all the physical character traits, for example, um, that still belong to your ancestors. So For example, in 90% of all cases, our core fear, like the fear that's the strongest in our life, is not ours. Because this field of transgenerational epigenetics has found that the epigenetic mechanism, so the way that our genes are getting regulated, gets passed down to us also, not just our physical appearance and stuff,
Yeah.
but also those mechanisms. And what this does is that also everything that our parents and grandparents experienced kind of is embedded in this epigenetic
Mm.
mechanism, in the epigenome, it's called.
Yeah.
So we really have to have a look at what gives us, for example, anxiety. Why do we have those feelings? Is it legit to have these feelings? Like, did we suffer from any kind of trauma in our life?
Mm.
Or is it maybe rooted generations before us? And that's a really interesting part because it
Yeah.
also it not only helps us to understand more who we really are and if we are really living our life or maybe a life that's influenced by, let's say, our grandma or grandpa or even generations before that,
Mm.
but also when we also give those things to our children, to our grandchildren. So by being aware of which impact we have, of which influence, we can kind of lay the basis for a more healthier society. Because all these things, they also influence the physical health
Yeah.
of the generations after you.
Yeah.
And there are multiple studies, like, yeah, I'm not sure if this is maybe a little bit too much for in this environment, but there are so many studies that show how these transgenerational issues can impact your physical health
Yeah.
also, and why, for example, your heart disease actually is related to something that your grandparents experienced
Mm.
age before you.
Yeah, yeah, I totally get that. I do similar stuff in my work when I go back down the generational line. Usually I have to go in and I can do it with the person and find out what the trauma was. So sort of go back on a timeline and find out what it was. And sometimes I'll get shown, like the other day, I got shown for somebody that was drinking a lot, extreme anxiety. So this was how they were soothing and go back in to see. And I was shown a graveyard. So obviously somebody died quite young. Then I was shown a cannon. So then I knew it was something connected to the war. And then go back down to see which war it was and what they experienced. But we would probably call it PTSD now.
Yeah.
I think they called it shell shock, didn't they, back in the day? And you can see like how that was probably taken on because they weren't in the war and we couldn't really find the connection for it. So
Yeah.
how do you do it when you do it? That's how I do it.
Yeah, so when I work with my clients on the transgenerational issues, then the first step is always we create a genogram, which is basically a family tree, if you want to break it down. And we really go back in a time in your family history, like 2, 3 generations. And we start by looking at like the obvious things, like, I don't know, if there may be any birthdays that are matching up or the same, or if there any dates in your history, in your family history, that kind of link up together.
Yeah.
Because this may sometimes already be the first clue for
Mm-hmm.
a connection. But then also we look at what challenges your ancestor had to face and how these challenges might have made them feel. And then this is most of the time where the awareness comes in, where people kind of start to connect the dots and be like, okay, so my grandma had to endure, I don't know, let's say famine
Yeah.
during the war. Ah, that's why I have this strange relationship to food now.
Yeah.
Or so this is when it kind of starts to make sense of what's happening in our life. And then there are certain techniques that I work on with my client of how to release those things so that you kind of really give it back to the ancestors that they belong to. Um,
Okay.
Similar to you, I work a lot with the quantum field then too, through meditation, but also different tools and techniques, like, for example, writing a letter to that ancestor, and just kind of explaining the situation and then letting it go. And what that does is like just allowing the awareness that something, like, for example, a fear that you have or just a feeling that you have is not yours, it doesn't belong to you.
Yeah.
Just alone that sometimes is already like a big step towards healing and towards being able to let go.
Yeah. Do you heal the ancestor as well? Because we would go back and we do like about 7 generations. It has like a knock-on effect going back down the line. Does that work for you, or do you just give it back to the person that maybe originated from?
Yeah, it depends. So most of the time, only giving it back to the person it originates from. But then if you kind of think further, obviously that person has a history too, and that affects like those 7 generations and stuff. Um, but in my work, yeah, most of the time we focus on that person here in the present. And for most people, it is enough to kind of give it back to that person, let's say 2 generations ago. Um, but yeah, so that's one part, the transgenerational part of epigenetics, which is really interesting. But yeah,
It is.
I
It's
hope.
fascinating, isn't it? So, what other aspects do you do as well then that covers the because you've got like a program, haven't you, on your website?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
can.
So I have those one-on-one coaching programs where people can choose either between the transgenerational part, where we really focus on that and trying to identify certain patterns that runs in a family, certain beliefs maybe that need to kind of let go of. Certain, yeah, diseases also, and how we can kind of just break free from those transgenerational patterns. And
Yeah.
then the other one-on-one coaching program I have is about everything health related, so mental health, physical health, and always from a epigenetic point of view. So we always look at, for example, which diet is best for you individually
Mm.
in order to I don't know, feel more energized, in order to feel more focused, in order to get rid of brain fog, or even just simple things like in order to lose some weight or stuff. But my approach is always based on epigenetics. So everything is scientifically proven, scientifically based,
Yeah.
and it always looks from the perspective of what benefits our gene function the most.
Mm.
And then I look at topics like, as I said, the diet, exercise, detoxing, a big one, because
Mm.
nowadays we're exposed to, I think it is 77,000 toxins.
I know.
Um, and these toxins, obviously, they also form part of our environment,
Yeah.
but it doesn't add good things to our environment, and that's why we
No.
need to detox on a regular basis. So I look into those things. Um, Stress management is a big one because I feel like everyone can relate to that. And unfortunately, we live in a time where stress cannot be fully avoided, but we can definitely learn how to deal with it and how to become resilient so that it doesn't affect us that much.
Yeah.
Um, and then sleep is a big one, how we can optimize our sleep so that everything functions in the body as it should.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, so it's really like a holistic approach. And I'm also certified as an integrative health practitioner. So my my coaching consists of obviously the epigenetic side of things, but then also integrative health, which is basically everything from functional medicine, Ayurveda, Chinese traditional medicine, Eastern medicine. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
looking at everything holistically,
Yeah. It's
because as you know, everything is connected in the
Yeah,
body.
it's like a journey, isn't it? When you start doing this type of work, you start end up going all down all different rabbit holes, don't you? And then you learn this one and you learn that one, and it all connects together, and you pull bits from each one, don't you, to assist the person that you're working what they need as well. It's a fascinating subject, isn't it? How do you work
That's
with trauma? Do you do the same sort of thing if you work on a trauma?
Yeah, so trauma is a little bit tricky because I'm not a trauma certified coach because you have to have certain certifications, or you need to be a psychologist or these kind of things to actively work with people that had traumatic experiences. So the only thing that I can do is kind of assist you in that whole journey, but officially I'm not really allowed to, let's say,
Okay.
treat trauma. Um, but in most cases, it is again connected with so many other things because trauma, most of the time, it kind of has some kind of health side effects, mental health, physical health, and I can help with those things.
Yeah.
But the actual trauma, that's something where I then would refer the client to a specialist, just because officially I'm not allowed to kind of
Yeah, it's a big
that.
subject, trauma one. I did the
Yeah,
training in that for my work when I was doing my healing and stuff. And I started to get people coming to me that were severely traumatized. And when you
yeah,
think you don't want to trigger them, you don't want to do a wrong move. Just think, well, intuitively, I didn't think I would, but there was always that like 1% of maybe you could just send
yeah.
them, So it was a concern of mine at the time. So I did like do the training in that. Found it very beneficial. So I can just incorporate it into what I do. But like you, I've sort of gone down a rabbit hole of all different things that I've learned and studied over the years. And yeah,
Yeah,
I just find
that's
it was all fascinating. I loved all of it, doing all of it. It's really
it's
cool.
that's funny that you say that. Just said that a few hours ago to somebody else because when I started my whole, let's say, awakening journey, like waking up to the kind of world we live in, but then also waking up to the health system, the health care, which should better be called sick care at the moment. It's more of a sick care system than a healthcare system, if we're
Yeah.
honest. But anyway, so as I was going down that rabbit hole, I then found epigenetics, and I was like, this is part of the solution because once people understand that we actually hold the power in our own hands over our health, once we
Mm.
can learn how to regulate our gene function, therefore determine if we're going to be rather healthy or rather sick for the rest of our life. We don't need to be dependent on the whole pharmaceutical system and everything that goes with it anymore. So I really kind of, yeah, and then as you said, once you go down that rabbit hole, there's another rabbit hole and another
Yeah.
one because everything is connected.
Yeah.
And that's, for example, also one thing that I do besides one-on-one coaching. I also launched a online course in which people can get information about, let's say, how our world works, about the quantum physics, because I feel like more and more people really need to learn about the field that connects everything and how we can actually participate in it, and
Yeah.
that our reality is based on quantum physics and not on Newtonian physics and stuff, that we live in an immaterial world, all these kind of things.
Yeah.
So this course really focuses on providing knowledge about all the paradigms that are changing at the moment, again, about how our world works, but then also solutions. And this is, I feel like, the big part, because when you go through your own awakening journey, sometimes you may feel a little bit lost or overwhelmed by everything that you
Mm.
learn and also everything that you have to unlearn, maybe.
Mm.
All the beliefs you had about the world, about how we relate to it, you kind of have to start at zero again, open your mind and learn all these new things. And that can leave you overwhelmed sometimes, even anxious or, yeah, just lost.
Mm.
So it was really important for me to include the solutions part where I give them through a method that I developed myself, the so-called HEART method. I
Yeah.
give them steps that people can really implement into their life, and it's easy. It's nothing like that you need 3 years time for.
Yeah.
It's just easy steps to implement step by step to feel more balanced in today's chaos and also to find true happiness and health. So, yeah,
Yeah.
that's one thing that I also offer.
I find a lot of people when they're trying to heal their stuff or dig deep, they start to go. This happens to me as well. They go through like a dark night of the soul journey where it's quite
Yes.
painful, isn't it? And they think that going in and starting to do this work will be transformational straight away, but there is a process to it, isn't it? And you do have to dig deep and sit with a lot of stuff and work through it and come to terms with it to come out the other side. So it's a journey, isn't it? It's not like a quick fix that you can just go in a couple of weeks and you're done. And even if you do like your courses, my stuff, you can only heal to the limit that you're able to at that present time. So therefore there might be another stage that you have to go through when you have accepted it, integrated it, and your body's come in alignment with what you've been taught or what you've done already. And then you're going to go on to another stage. So it's just never ending, really, isn't it, to
Yes.
do this work, to process.
Yeah, it really isn't. And a couple of days ago, I saw this nice analogy or metaphor, where it's more about kind of getting rid of layer after layer that got put on us within the last years, like basically from the time we enter this world. Those layers are getting put on us through education in the school, through programming, through beliefs of how the world has to be and how to navigate life in it. But then when you go through that awakening journey, it's like peeling off those layers in order to get through to that most authentic version of yourself. And like the most authentic, but also most aligned person.
Mm.
Um, and that process can be quite intense, definitely. And it's also, as I said, it's never ending because there will always be another layer and another layer that you
I
can kind
know.
of pull back.
Yeah.
Um, but I feel like once you have a certain tool set at hand, it gets easier. So you kind of know how to tackle the things and you know how to kind of stay sane and stable in the whole process. So you always have those tools that help you to reconnect to your truest essence. And that's what I also try to teach my clients, and especially with this online course, it gives you a lot of tools that you can easily implement into your everyday life, also that you can easily implement with your kids, with your family.
Yeah.
So it's really practical because it has to be practical. Otherwise, it's just something
Yeah.
that will never get used.
Yeah, they will find it too difficult. I think one of the biggest things to overcome with people I work with is the limiting beliefs and the programming. And the programming
Yes.
from like so young. And even when I speak to the older generation and I look and I can just see the programs just playing out again and again and again. But usually by that time, there's no hope because they won't change the way that they
I
think.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's,
it's getting in
yeah.
doing it when you know that you do need help and you know that something is not right in your life. You just don't feel aligned. Or maybe you feel depressed. I mean, I think that's a big indicator, isn't it, that something's not going very well for you. If you feel depressed, if there's no joy in your life,
Yeah.
there's obviously underlining stuff there that you need to start going in and address and maybe uncover, really. It's like just the journey of
Yeah.
digging deep, isn't it? That's like I don't even know how else
Yeah.
to explain that one.
Yeah. No, it is. You nailed it, I think. And especially with depression, it's basically first of all, it's already a little bit in a world, deep rest. So what you need is deep rest. But also depression in most cases is just a lack of expression. So you're kind of either you don't allow yourself to express yourself properly in a most authentic way, or you don't know how to express yourself, um, all these kind of things. Because once you truly fully step into that, as I said, authentic self, once you express yourself in your best version,
Yeah,
then the chances for depression are quite low, I reckon.
yeah. It's getting out of it and just getting them motivated in the first place because everything's difficult, isn't it, when they're at that
Yeah,
stage of well, any
exactly.
extreme emotion, I guess, is really hard to start the process and deal with it. But like we say, if we don't deal with it, you're just going to end up passing that on. that's going to end up in your kids and their kids. And
Yes.
one of the big things that made me go into doing some of the trauma work, even though I was sort of touching on it, was the fact that I've got a little granddaughter. She's 5 now. And I could see repeating patterns going in through the family lines, especially down the female line. And I thought, I do not want this to repeat again.
Yeah.
I don't want some of these things to happen to her. So I started going in, doing it on me, going back down the generational line, clearing, healing, doing all the stuff the best I could. But of course, stuff still pops up every now and again. I just think, oh, I didn't even know about that one. I'll go back and do that one now. It's like
I know. Yeah. No, that's
even if they don't do it for themselves, they need to think of another reason why they should do it. He's like, look at your kids, look at your grandkids, and
that's exactly one of my big motivations why I do this work, even if I don't have children myself yet. Even just like for the children of my cousins or whatever, like first of all, it's a question of in which world do we want them to grow up? How do they relate to being human and what it means to be human? But then also, like you said, like it is on us now to kind of set the groundwork so that they can then grow up free of all these limiting beliefs, of everything that kind of holds them back or just makes life a little bit harder than it actually has to be. And that's why I always try to address my generation also, because we are the ones that are already raising children or will be raising children, which is the next generation. So it's kind of really on us now. But yeah, that's just, it's definitely a big responsibility. But as the word also says, responsibility, in the end, it's something good. It's our ability to respond to situations and to create new systems, create new ways of thinking. And yeah, the basis for like a healthier society.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that sun's getting really strong behind you
Yeah,
now. Can you still see me?
I can. Yeah.
Okay. I'm just worried about the recordings. I said to Larissa before I jumped on, like I've moved all around the room to try and get away from the sun, and now I'm sitting, directly behind me. So it is what it is. But because of the time difference, we had to do it quite early, and the sun does come in through the window really early in my apartment. So, is there anything else that you want to say? So, like, we'll start to wrap it up because otherwise we might be blinded.
Um, no, I think we covered quite a lot, I feel like.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting, really good to talk to you.
Oh,
And yeah, whenever someone is interested in what I offer or has like a certain health issue they want to address, and really getting on that root cause, then feel free to get in touch. Also, my online course is just a perfect opportunity to kind of start your awakening journey and to get like that knowledge that you need to know in order to adapt new ways of thinking, for example, with the quantum physics and stuff. But then also have this tool set at hand, so that the next few years are going to be more easier to go through. And yeah.
Yeah. So you're on social media. So you've got a Facebook page and you've got an Instagram, haven't you? So I can
Yes.
pop your
Yes.
links below so people can find you. And also you'll be
Yeah.
tagged in the video, so they can get quick access to you and see what you do, and they can visit your website and everything and have a look round. And hopefully this has spurred somebody on now to start their journey where they've been maybe procrastinating, thinking
Yeah.
about it for ages, as people do, and thinking, I'll get round to that one day. And maybe stop making excuses for the reasons that they don't do things. Usually like, I can't afford it, or I haven't got the time, or this is happening and that's happening. If you really want to do the work on yourself and dig deep and start on your journey of healing yourself, whether it's for health reasons, mental health reasons, or just for the fact that you're worrying about the next generation, then you really need to start sort of going in and doing this. Okay, these processes are not always pleasant, are they? They're not, it is what it is. But once you come out the other side and you start finding the techniques, the tools, the ways to do it, releasing some of this stuff that you're carrying, you'll feel a whole lot better in yourself. You'll feel like a different person. And then you can
Yeah.
go and help other people as well.
Yeah.
You can pass on the knowledge, can't you, to family members? And
Yeah.
I did this and she showed me that, and you should do this as
Yeah.
well. That's how it works, isn't it? Everybody helps each other and we all move on. It's been so lovely talking to you. Thank you so much, because there is quite a time difference between us two today of jumping on and doing this podcast. So I really appreciate you and the work that you do. It's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful.
No, thank you. It was
So
amazing.
I hope people do connect with you. So please do connect with her. Find her on Instagram if you just want to check in what she's doing. And I'll pop all the links up as well for you, so you can go on her website. So I say goodbye, Larissa. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you today coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. And I'm sure we will meet again somehow.
We will. Yeah. I'd love to have you back on again once the channel gets bigger, and we'll come back on and see how you are.
Yeah, I'd love that.
That'd
Yeah.
be great, won't it? Oh, thank you so much.
No
Bye for
worries.
now.
Thank you.